Good afternoon and welcome to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM. Each week, I invite an expert from the world of business to share their knowledge, insights, and tips to help you with your business challenges. If there's a topic you would like covered or if you feel you can make a contribution, please email me at yourbusiness@dublincityfm.ie and perhaps we'll be having a chat here one day soon. My guest today has run a successful property maintenance company. He now runs an event management business and he's also a celebrant. I'm delighted to welcome Damian Moloney to the You and Your Business studio. Hiya, Damian.
Hey, Alec, thanks for having me on today.
No,
Much
fantastic.
appreciated.
Yeah, no, I think you have a very interesting story that our listeners will love. Let's take you back to your last year in school. I mean, for some people, it was just a platform to go on to another level. For many, it was a way of getting away from education and moving into the world of business. Where were you on all of that?
Right. Well, I was far from thinking of college, Alec, to be quite perfectly honest with you. And my last years in schools, I didn't really like anyway. So I was
Right.
delighted to leave. And I started work in the nightclub scene.
All right.
And from there, yeah, I started working the nightclub scene and I worked there for many years. And it was something I really, really enjoyed. And from there, then I progressed into hairdressing. I was
Right.
able to do hairdressing by day as an apprenticeship because we all needed in those days an apprenticeship.
Right.
And then I was able to work the nightclubs by night. And when you're that young, Alec, you can do all those hours. It's called burning the midnight oil.
Well, that's great. I suppose what both of them have in common is interacting with people. So I presume this was something that you had a passion for.
Yeah, I've always loved meeting people. So when I started working the nightclub, the first thing I realized was people and the work that they gave me because I went through the ranks fairly quickly in the nightclub. I was actually too young to start in the nightclub,
Right.
but I gave such an enthusiastic interview. They they gave me the job, and they put me behind the scenes for the first, let's say, 6 7 weeks, and after that, that was it. That was my journey. They had me doing every job imaginable then in the nightclub, including rostering the staff, and I was only 19. So
Wow.
yeah, it was good. Yeah.
It was good. So, I mean, okay, hairdressing, you had to develop a skill. I mean, I know that was important to you. How long were you going to be spending there?
Lesson was 4 years.
All right.
That on top of my nighttime work, I also had college in the evening
Right.
once a week as well.
So
So there was
education
an
did come back to haunt you.
oh, it did, yeah. It took about 4 years to get me back into the classroom after my fright of the last 2 years in school.
Right.
But
So,
no, I enjoyed it. I'd done 2 years in college there and
okay.
passed all my exams, and that was the important part because you need to do that to finish your apprenticeship, which I did after 4 years.
All right. So you obviously loved that whole aspect of hairdressing, but was there any particular niche area that you kind of moved towards?
In the hairdressing, yes, there was color.
Oh,
Color was my speciality. So the hairdressing shop that I worked in had two floors, a ground floor and a basement. The
right.
basement was my home.
Right.
It was my home. It was brilliant. And I had the opportunity um, to show my strength in my work. And because of that, in those days, once you'd done your apprenticeship, you were let go.
Ah,
They
right.
were hard times. That were going back to the 80s, and they were tough times. So I was given 6 months to prove my ability, and I
Okay.
did. I changed their whole system, and because of that, I also even built up my clientele. So when it came to my 6 months, I handed him his clientele in a box,
Right.
and I kept my job because I was the only one that was able to look after the clientele that was in that box. So I was delighted. And it meant I could continue to do the work that I love doing.
Yeah.
And at that time, too, I was still working away in the nightclubs, having
Oh,
fun as well.
oh,
So
great. Great. I mean, in terms of certainly the whole world of color in terms of hairdressing is a very, very knowledgeable piece that and a speciality. So therefore, I could see why they'd want to keep you on.
Oh yeah. Well, I loved it, right? And that spilled into my nighttime work. And honestly, you're looking puzzled there. How is that? The nightclub held each year Miss Ireland.
All right.
Okay. So I just used to love, watching all the models going up and down, and you could see all the different hairstyles and stuff like that. But the nightclub still, like they were very good to me.
Right.
And they insisted that I get all the top jobs in there. And one of them was to come in during the day and work the Miss Ireland. Now, work the Miss Ireland, they had a special meal laid out for all the contestants. There'd be 30 people there. And there was this particular chef that insisted. There was nobody else to work with him but me. And we just loved it. It was great. You get to meet all the models. Olivia Tracy,
All
former
right.
Miss Ireland.
Yeah.
What an absolutely beautiful woman. I
Mm.
tell you, she never walked by you without saying hello. Beautiful woman. So you got to like them, meet the likes of them
Uh,
at this, and you interacted with them as well. And that, by the way, is how I got my job in the hairdressing, by meeting somebody that owned a hairdressing salon in the nightclub. So it's amazing how they just connect and they move.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm seeing a sort of thread running through this. You like interacting with people, so that means about networking. And then also in terms of your organizational skills, they had you in the nightclub doing it, and then you brought that into the whole hairdressing business as well. So there's a couple of skills that you developed.
Yeah, you do, and you bring them forward with you. And those skills are still with me now. But yes, you do bring them forward. And sometimes you can get the opportunity to implement them in the job that you're doing at the time. And sometimes you have to scale them back. It really depends on the day what you were doing, because the hairdressing did evolve from looking after people needing their hair done to looking after people who needed treatment for chemotherapy. That's
Oh,
another end of the business that I did as well. And that was at the latter of my time in Snips. That was very rewarding.
mm. And if you're just joining us now, you're listening to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my guest today is Damian Moloney. Just picking up on our conversation there, as you said, that's a very, very important part of the business. But before we get on to that, you had an interesting conversation with your boss in the hairdressing business. As you said, he was likely to let you go, but saw your organizational skills as well as your color talent. But he lured you in a particular way to stay on.
Yeah. So he always brings people out to have a little chat. And I remember him saying to me, Damien, where do you see yourself now in a few years' time? And I said, well, okay. Well, the first thing I want to do, I said, and I almost have it ready, is to buy a house. I said, I want to knuckle down, work hard, and buy a house.
Right,
And his reaction was, oh, because he loved investing himself. He
right.
bought and sold houses, renovated them. So he just turned around and said, well, Damien, I'm just throwing this up in the air, but how do you feel about management here in the salon? Because we will need someone now that the salon is getting busy.
Right.
And so I was delighted to be offered that. But I said to him, listen, I'm delighted you offered that to me. You're not the first person to offer me that. And he looked back, he thought, well, where is this coming from? I says, I left the nightclub. They offered me management too, but I wasn't too happy to
Right.
go about it because in those days it was a lot tougher and you had to be more, I don't know what way, you had to be not cruel, but you had to be tough in
Right.
that game. And that wasn't me. Hairdressing is an awful lot more, it's easier in
Yes.
that way. And you could deal with staff an awful lot better and be more creative. So I
Yes.
was delighted to be offered the management role, and I took it. 6 months later, I was or actually 4 months later, I was his manager. And 3 months after that, I bought myself my first house.
Oh, fantastic.
See,
And how did that
my
come about? I mean, obviously you had your deposit in that, but I mean, you were very young at the time to be buying a house.
I was told that by everybody. I was very young. Even my mother didn't want me to buy the house, and that is no lie. The advantage of working in a nightclub, I got a job in a nightclub in Lucan, and it was paying me quite a lot of money.
Right.
And within a year, I'd saved my deposit for my house thanks to working there. And I took the opportunity to do it. And I approached my boss at the time in the hairdressing and I said, look, I'm seeing this house tomorrow. So he cancels his whole day and comes out with me
Right.
and took the whole thing away from me. And he bought the house for me on my behalf. I said nothing because he had more experience than I did. And he loved every second of it. And before I knew where I was 24 years of age and I had a big mortgage over my head. But hey, no pressure.
No pressure. Oh, well, listen, this is what you wanted. This was going to be a platform for the future. So obviously, this person found something in you that he could invest in, not just financially, but also in terms of your career as well. You were obviously going to be staying with him for a while. How did that all pan out?
Panned out very well because he taught me loads. I mean, you could go to college. He sent me on one or two courses and they bored the socks off me, right? Fine. His skills were unbelievable. The first thing he taught me was my telephone skills.
All right.
And this is before Aircom or any of them were using the telephone skills that we all use today.
Right.
We were using them at least 5, 6 years before anyone. And
Right.
it was, and this is something that these colleges never taught you.
No.
How to look after people, how to manage people, how to empathize with people, and how to read people. And that stands to me right up to this very day.
Wow.
So those skills, they're priceless, Alec. Priceless.
So he proved to be a good mentor to you.
He was always a good mentor. He turned himself. I could see the change in him. We all change every couple of years. If we don't change, Alec,
Hmm.
we need to evolve. And if we don't evolve, then it means we haven't done anything with our lives. And it's as simple as that. And I seen him evolve and he got more charismatic. And I could see where he was coming from. And obviously the business that I worked in evolved too. It evolved from not just hairdressing. We got a beauty section in, and we also then got a wig section in. And that's when things started to change. That would be around the late 90s, early noughties that happened. And business changed, and we had to change with it, and more new skills came. So it
Yes,
was a great learning.
and you mentioned also the importance of sort of women now and the importance of looks and self-esteem through what you were able to provide, which was probably the whole side of the wig end of the business.
Yeah, well, there's two or three aspects of the wigs. There was we looked after, and it was unheard of then, we looked after cross dressers as well.
All right.
And, you know, that's a big thing for them in those days
Really?
because they were scared, they were vulnerable, and they were lost.
Right.
So when they came in, we had a private consultation room, and it was my boss more so than me. He made their world a better world. It's as simple as that.
Wow.
We didn't stick with them for long because a lot of places then, when equality started to come in, then in the noughties, things started to get a little bit easier. So we stuck them with people undergoing treatment for chemotherapy. And this is where it gets very interesting because while I didn't do the consultation for the wigs,
Hmm.
my boss did that and he done an incredible job. My job was on the phone, going back to those phone skills. And my job was to understand this person that was ringing me. They probably just found out that they were going to lose their hair.
Right.
And I had to deal with that.
Right.
And that requires a lot of skill,
Mm.
and it requires a lot of understanding,
Yes.
and it requires a whole lot of empathy. You've got to understand where these clients are coming from, how vulnerable they are, and what help we can give them. And the service that we provide was second to none. The
Right.
quality of the work and how we looked after the clients. It was amazing.
Yes, you're right. You've identified what an awful place for people to find themselves in, and realistically, they need somebody, as you said, who's empathetic, who has a skill set that can help them improve their own self-esteem, quality of life, and you were able to provide all of that.
Yeah, yeah, we were. And we saw some of them come out on the other side.
Mm,
And unfortunately, some of them didn't make it,
yeah,
and that's life, unfortunately.
yeah.
But there were some lovely clients that came in. I remember this lovely girl, long hair, Polish girl,
Mm,
and she had a very positive outlook.
all right.
And I remember when her hair was short, she's a very attractive girl, and she had a kid, lovely kid. And I remember when her hair grew back, there was another client came in, and God love her, she was very upset. And
Yes.
my boss just took her upstairs, and the Polish girl went up with her. And
Right.
the two of them mentored and done the consultation with her. And that to me is a turnaround. You see this beautiful girl coming in, young girl with a child. Her hair was down her back, Alec. It was long, dark hair. And she was just delighted. She had her life back. And she wanted to share that. I do you know what it is, Alec? She wanted to give her love to that person. And up those stairs she went to the consultation room and did that. And that to me, that's what makes this work for me meaningful. That's what drives me to do that, to be with people, is to try and help them. Because we've only got one life, Alec. We got an opportunity.
Yep.
And my attitude is just get out there and do it.
All right. And if you're just joining us now, you're listening to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my guest today is Damian Moloney. Yes, I mean, that's certainly things to think about. Let's move on with your career, though, because property wasn't going to leave you alone and you weren't going to leave it alone. So you were going to have another foray into that world.
Yeah, well, I suppose I went to Australia for a month, didn't want to come back, but I did. And I ended up investing in property.
Right.
And myself and my friend, we decided to buy one property together, which was fantastic. The biggest mistake was when we bought the second property together.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, look, that's life. But the good news is we still have them
Yeah.
and they're going very well. But hard times did hit.
Yes, of course.
And what I had to do, obviously, my job went from full time to part time.
Yes.
So I had an opportunity then. A friend of mine who had 8 units asked me to take over running them.
All right. Yeah.
And she introduced me to another woman who had 16 units and
Right.
asked me to take over them,
Mm.
who introduced me to somebody else who had 4 units
Mm.
and asked me to take over them. And I had a maintenance guy. It was meant to be 2 of us doing it. And only 2 months into the business, this poor guy shied out because he just got too scared of the whole recession and everything.
Yes, of course.
And I was left running the whole thing on my own.
Yeah, but you
30
good
odd units.
yeah, but you had good
No stress,
organization
Damian.
skills. Yeah.
No stress whatsoever. I remember even on Christmas Eve moving somebody in at 8 o'clock at night. And I just said, oh, God. But I done that for a few years.
Yeah.
And I said, right, there's another opportunity coming my way in 2013. Things started to just move a little bit better then. We were still in a recession, Alec, but
Yeah,
it
of
was
course. Yeah.
just getting a little bit better. And you had to have a license manage other people's properties. And I said, well, hang on a second. I'm not going to start doing all that again.
Sure.
So I said, no, let's try something new. So I managed to move the properties on and keep my own, of course, managing my own, I could still do.
Yeah,
And I opened up a car wash.
as you do.
As you do. Let's leave hairdressing and nightclubs out of it. Turn the world upside down and learn how to wash cars.
Yeah.
Well, I was meant to run the car wash. I was told, yeah, you'll be grand, we'll be able to open this, that, and the other, but you learn by your mistakes, Alec, and you can't blame anyone.
No, no.
Even the person that went into business with me
Yeah.
didn't know that you had to do this. First of all, when you learn, the learning is very simple. When you start a new trade, you have to learn the new trade. It's very simple,
Sure.
right? We opened up a waterless wash. The mistake made on one person's side was they didn't compare a waterless wash to a wet wash.
Right.
If we'd have known the difference between them, I wouldn't have opened up a waterless wash. Definitely not. Now, there is an advantage to open up a waterless wash. You don't have to use the gym at all. I shed kilos with it. For this. It was great. My God, there was a washboard belly there for years. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
It was hard work.
Yeah.
I tried to put the customer service, the skills that I had into it, and in ways it worked. And to be fair with the staff, the culture that I instilled with them, it worked. It really did work. But by 2018, I knew that things were changing again. People were leaving. You know, the turnover was too great because employment was gone back up again.
Yes.
And I just said, right, it's time to move this business on and do something different. And that's exactly, Alec, what I did. I moved the business on. I was delighted to move it on. I learned from it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get involved in a car wash again, but I'm not going to say it was a bad thing. I learned loads from it. So my friend who owns the property with me is also a mentor. And he drilled into my brain, Damian, you only do from now on what you love doing. And that was my motto from 2018.
And I
it
think
has
that's an
to be
important
what I
lesson for
love
everybody.
doing.
Yeah, it's an important lesson for everybody that you know, if you really find yourself not enjoying what you're doing, there are opportunities to find something you love doing and to monetize it.
Yeah. Yeah. And me, I know this sounds cheeky, I get paid for talking.
Good.
It's gas. I love it. I love doing it. And like while we had the recession, in the evening time, obviously the nightclubs had gone at that stage, and I'd be too old and to be working in the nightclubs. I got involved in the events in the
Right.
evening time, working on the corporate events, and that's how my journey started. With that, working in the evenings, and there'd be likes of speakers like Bob Proctor and
Right.
John Boyle, and they'd be going on stage. So my work would be to put them on stage, mic them up, talk to the sound engineer, make sure their laptop was ready for their presentation and stuff like that. And then there could be 200-300 people in the room, and my job was to manage them, make
Right.
sure that they were looked after, and make sure the room was run properly, the lighting in the room was right, the temperature of the room was right, and then escorting all these people out, showing them where to eat, bringing them back in, making sure that they're not straggling out the back when the presentation is on inside,
Yeah.
And that's where my journey started with the next phase of my life.
And let's talk about that for the sort of 3 minutes that we've left here to talk about eventhost.ie and what your aspirations are around that business. We know what's motivated you to get into it, so let's talk about your sort of aspirations around it, and also the fact that you're a celebrant, so you can move in different directions there too.
Yeah. So for me, the wedding celebrancy came in 2018. I done a course actually 2019, and I done the course, and I enjoyed it. I topped the class as well. I was delighted to say, and it was great. So then COVID hit, which is quite hard. But my job is word of mouth, Alec. When
Yes.
people know me and they see me, they'll know that they'll want, they'll say, well, look, Damian, you're the man for our job. I've managed to do a few weddings and I've enjoyed them all. So what makes me stand out from other people is I love people. I don't just connect with the bride and the groom or the groom and the groom. I connect with everybody, every single guest. And that's important. You need to reach out to everybody in the room. I know it's the happy couples day, but everybody has to enjoy it. So
Yes.
the attention to detail, and I suppose an example of attention to detail is the bride and groom are about to come up and they have their bridesmaids. And there's this lovely girl. And I said to her, what are you doing? She had this dirty piece of paper and I had, that's my speech. I said, oh God, no. So I took that off. I said, the photographer's out there now. He's going to take a picture of you with this rag in your hand. I said, no. So I said, look, in my book, I have your speech. So I was prepared for this.
Yeah.
Again, this is attention to detail. So I said, two things are going to happen here. A, you're going to walk up that aisle with just your lovely flowers. And B, you're going to be reading from a nice book. So when the photographer takes your picture for the second time, how great you're going to look.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is what I love doing. And that's what gives me joy, making other people happy. This is their day. This is their happy day, Alec. And if I can't make it happy, well, then I shouldn't be doing it. It's as simple as that.
No, that's
It's
very
as,
true. And I mean, and you can see where that lineage came from. Again, from your early days in nightclubs to moving on to hairdressing to working with people who had all sorts of challenges around their hair. Empathy, you're talking about connections, you're talking about networking, and it's all sort of come together. I suppose in the last 30 seconds we've got left, tell me, where can people find out more about you and contact you?
okay. So info@eventhost.ie. That would be the first, or just go onto my website, www.eventhost.ie, and up comes my phone number straight away on the website so they can contact me as well. And that's it. That's how they get in touch with me. Very simple.
Great. Well, that sounds fantastic. And I must say, what a lovely interview we've just had there. Can I say a special thanks to our guest, Damian Moloney, for coming into the You and Your Business studio today. Thanks also to Salmon Sound. The podcast of today's show will be available on dublincityfm.ie from tomorrow. Thank you for your company. And please remember to join me, Alec Drew, again next week at the same time, 12:30, right here on 103.2 Dublin City FM for another edition of You and Your Business.